And so you need to be aware of these things. That's why I work on my channel. There's a lot of unhealed people all over the internet selling you coursework. I ran into another one this morning, trying to teach women how to identify abusers. And the videotape, which, you know what, I'll connect it to this one. The videotape of the abuser, who basically the guy, he finds, it's like the Shannon Sharpe situation. What men are being taught and women are taught the same thing: how to victimize, pick a victim, how to victimize if you're going to form a certain kind of relationship. Shannon Sharpe, the current incident with him, he picked a 19, 20-year-old person who technically doesn't have a formed brain, and decided to enter into a relationship in which that person is now accusing him of things. And there is tape. There's like audio tape of him telling the girl what he was going to do to her, that he was going to abuse her because she's made him so angry that next time he sees her, he's going to abuse her. He's an individual. If you will do that, he is an individual who is not a person who you need in your life in the position of a relationship. You may be able to form a business relationship. You may be able to have, you may be able to associate for a given purpose, may be able to have good conversation. The person may have wisdom that they can teach you. But from a relationship standpoint, they are not mature. And when a person picks a victim, and they pick the person because they're going to have some form of a relationship, right? Whether you would just associate for a specific benefit. I'll use the word benefit, as there are probably young people related to me who would be watching this. So if you're picking, again, let me just start by saying I'm not demonizing people and their, I'm not trying to demonize anyone with this video that I'm making here. What I'm trying to do is to help people to be in the position, and I'm giving you this stuff for free, to be in the position to make better decisions. Many of us are on social media trying to tell you guys things so that many women are helping younger women to be able to navigate relationships a lot better, because we just weren't taught enough. We were raised by people who were too immature and in abusive relationships themselves, yelling, screaming, all kinds of verbal. Some people were in physical abuse. They saw the physical abuse with their parents. And those people weren't in a position to teach us like how to have healthy relationships. And so many of us are trying to give you that information now, and that's what I'm doing. But I want to say, like, women need to begin to be able to identify a person as a victimizer. And women have to learn how to exit relationships in which a person shows you a pattern of behavior. And you've given them just enough room to show you that pattern of behavior, and you got to exit that relationship. And you need to have a strong enough love of self in order to do that. And you need to so that's why I recommend you just need a therapist. It's good to have friends. It's good to have family. Maybe you have a pastor. But know this, is that human beings share their bad habits with you, and their founding dogma, like who they are, that founding dogma forms their character. And we saw, as I've talked about in the other videos, we saw individuals with founding dogma that shows you that even though they're in a position of influence and power, and they're a pastor and they're claiming to be a Christian, which I don't know what kind they are. I don't know. That we found through the videos that were put out about the podcast, that they shouldn't be people speaking into our lives, because their actions in that video showed you everything you need to know, and their content showed you everything you need to know. It's like when Marvin Sapp wants to tell people to close the doors, and he's trying to extort $40,000 out of them, and telling people that God is telling him that you can give 100, you can give 1,000, and you know that that's a pattern of behavior that pastors will use to get money out of people. Charge them for learning how to pray. Charge them for all manner of things. We've all seen how capitalism, how pastors and preachers are running a business and they're really CEOs of a business, that they're gonna keep open at all costs, even though there's abuse going on in the church. But I'll be brief. You need to begin to see people's patterns. People with extreme pattern recognition like myself, it's easy. The downfall of that is that you see people's patterns. You then have to figure out whether or not you want to stay in that cycle of abuse with them. The problem is that men and women have a trauma bond. They are trauma bonded in this weird continuous cycles of abuse, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical abuse, verbal abuse. I learned very young as a child that there was such a thing as verbal abuse. And I had to realize that that is abuse. When your parent is telling you they're going to throw you through a window, when they're going to do all kinds of crazy mess to you. That's why I don't spank my children to this day. We were spanked so much, so often for just anything. Spanking, you feel bad, you don't seem right. Well, I'm going to spank you until you learn how to project the approach. So I don't believe in spanking. It's not necessary. And I quite frankly, but anyway, that's for smaller children, because they're too young. Once you realize it, and I had begun to try that, implement that cycle of abuse, and you realize that the kid is so, like, your brain. That's why critical thinking is important, because as an adult, I was just like, this kid is not gonna understand. You're gonna sit there and beat the child. The best way to help a kid to learn is to help them. You have to mature as a parent yourself. That process, it's not necessarily gentle parenting in the way that people like to marginalize it. It's the kind of parenting that actually requires that you be active and aware of what it's going to take to get your child's attention, and to the kind of punishments that it's going to take to help change that child's behavior. Because what I've realized as a person who argues for a living, you figure out what a person wants, you figure out what a person needs, and then when you're learning what it's going to take to punish your child, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, when you're learning what it's going to take to punish your child, you take that away. And you don't do it in a sadistic manner where you're starving your kid. You like them, that other, what was it, was she Mormon? Anyway, it was the popular influencer who was starving her kids, locking them, chaining them up. All of that made her feel better. That was her finding a way to punish her child, beating her children, starving them to death, emotionally and physically abusing them. That is her just being an abuser. So there are ways of managing your children's behavior that they're not perfect, but it's just a journey that you and your kid are going to have to go on. And sometimes you're going to find yourself like, I will calm down. I'll tell my child, you go over there, you sit over there. You think about what you did, and I'm going to take a minute to calm down. Then you go into parent mode. Then you go, I learned that from I think it was a therapist. Then you go and deal with the behavior that you saw. Instead of your trauma being triggered, your core dogma being triggered, and then you end up abusing a kid, abusing your mates. And I'll wrap back around, but I'm such a yapper sometimes. But the important thing to learn from this situation is certain people, not everyone, just because they call themselves a coach, a pastor, or a preacher, needs to be in your life talking. And in the age of the internet and social media, it gives you the opportunity to see people for who they are, because they cannot hide it. They cannot hide it. There will always be abusers who can, but people are in a push right now to gain people's attention, so they are doing whatever they can to get that attention, and it's coming in the forms of admission to who they are. So pay attention to it, because a lot of you are a lot luckier than you realize, and that you're getting free game.